Chapter 3, the Nara period, 710 to 794. As always, there are many images included in this chapter. Nicole will track them down and insert them into their corresponding places into this video. A new capital, the capital of Nara, is constructed in a fertile and beautiful valley, and a whole culture is devoted to the veneration of the life of the historical Buddha. Monasteries, nunneries, temples flourish. The first stirrings of a literature produce histories and a poetry anthology. Buddhism and the rigid Chinese pattern of centralized rule dominate the government. And as always, this chapter begins with two chronologies, the historical chronology and the art chronology. We'll go over those in class. A lot of important events and important works of art taking place around this time in the Nara period, which lasted 84 years. The golden age of Buddhism is how the Nara period is sometimes described as. Prince Gautama, Siddhartha Gautama, the historical Buddha, was born in India. His teachings spread over China and reached Japan, where they found highly receptive soil. Buddha taught four truths, these are the four noble truths, that led to perfect knowledge and enlightenment, or the state of nirvana, nehang, as we say in Japanese, which is the state of the fire extinguishing and going out. And the four noble truths, or the shitai, as we say in Japanese, are the following. In all life there is suffering. Suffering is caused by desire. Suffering, or the cravings, is another way to translate that. Suffering can be ended because the cause is known. The way to end suffering is to follow the 8-step path. Correct or right conduct, right intent, right speech, right knowledge, right means of livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right meditation. These principles evoked a sympathetic response in the Japanese temperament. Nor was there any real conflict with Shintoism, which was the native sort of worldview or metaphysics or religion, if you want to call it that existed in Japan before the introduction of Buddhism. There was no conflict with it. Both the court and the peasant found comfort in a belief in non-violence, in the sacred nature of all living things, and in an overall plan for each life. Buddhism became the symbol of the age. A new capital had been erected in a fertile valley of the Yamato Basin. It was called Heijo, or Nara, and was modeled after the capital of the Tang Dynasty, China. Nara soon became the center of advanced Buddhist doctrines. Learned monks taught the words and deeds of Gautama, Siddhartha Gautama, the historical Buddha. Two famous temples, the Horyuji and the Yakushiji, had been standing in the peaceful valley. Now monasteries and nunneries sprang up in the wooded hills. In the court, learning and the arts blossomed. They bore fruit in the form of the first two historical chronicles of Japan, the Kojiki and the Nihon Shoki, and in the Manyoshu, or the anthology of 1,000 leaves, it's sometimes translated as collection of 1,000 leaves, the first great collection of Japanese poetry, which included early works of a distinctive Japanese flavor. And here we have image 28 on this page. This is the Shaka Hasozu, or the 8 aspects of Buddhist life. This is told or depicted in 8 scrolls, color on silk, and produced in the late 13th century, so long after the Nara period, but it depicts events that were important to the Nara period. Colorful, delicately wrought statues were created for the temples and the court. Chinese scrolls depicting the details of his life were adopted by Japanese artists to show Siddhartha Gautama, the historical Buddha, from a Japanese point of view. The Emperor Shōwa built a 53-foot statue of the Buddha, the Vairocana image. And just the short inscription to that image 28, the Buddha, it is written, was born from the side of the queen Maya as she reached up to a branch in her garden. On the next page we have image 28, also from the same. Here we see seated with his father and his mother, the young prince Gautama is entertained by dancers. Below he sees a dying man. There's a famous episode about his encounter with the dying man. And on the next page is also from the same 8 aspects of the Buddha's life. Here in this part of the scroll, we see after the Buddha was born, it is told he took 8 steps and said, "In all the world, I am the only honored one." Capital was ablaze with color in brilliant painted roofs, decorated columns, and painted temple doorways. Sculpture, painting, handicrafts, music, and literature all flourished in this Buddhist climate of the Nara's capital. But it was also a period of unrest. Crop failures and heavy taxes plagued the peasantry. The promotion of Buddhism might have been in some degrees a conscious attempt to pacify the discontent. If so, it did not succeed significantly. The old Japanese land tenure system was based on extensive private holdings of semi-autonomous clans. Influenced by the Chinese pattern of small holdings owned by individual farmers paying taxes to a central government, the Nara nobles embarked on a program of dividing the land into small family farms. The plan faltered because there was not enough desirable land for all who wanted it. But a great barrier to success was the tax burden. The three types of taxes were levied: a land tax payable in rice, a produce tax on products other than rice, such as fish or silk, and payable in the product itself, and a labor tax, which the farmer and his sons paid by serving in the military or on civil works projects. To evade these onerous taxes and to keep from starvation, many small farmers abandoned their holdings and became serfs on large estates. As more land was repossessed by the aristocracy and the church, it says here, but obviously that's the wrong word, by the temple system, you might say, by the clergy, the temple Buddhist clergy, the tax burden became increasingly heavy on the small landholders. They had no choice but to sell, mortgage, or abandon their lands. The favored Buddhist monasteries became large landowners and an increasingly important part of the central government. So we're seeing the rise in status, rise in power of the Buddhist monasteries. During the latter part of the Nara period, the monk Dokyo became chancellor, and Buddhism spread from the capital throughout the provinces. But Dokyo, the monk, failed in his attempt to assume control over the throne, and the Buddhist influence in the imperial court gave way to the influential nobles of the rising Fujiwara family. And on the next page, you see 4 images, all from the same work, namely the Sutra on the Past and Present Karma, or the Kako Genzai Inga Kyo, it's called in Japanese. These are texts in ink, illustrations in color on paper from the 8th century. The Jōmon Dendaiji in Kyoto houses this sutra. The first one has stories of the Buddha, which tell how, as a youth, he saw his young cousin push down an elephant. Gautama said he had done evil. In the next one, you see strong and active as a youth, the young historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, practiced traditional Eastern wrestling, closely related to sumo wrestling today. In the third image from the same sutra, we see, to show his natural strength, the historical Buddha lifted the elephant, saying it is more important to lift up than to push down. And in the fourth one, an expert at archery, the Prince Gautama, or the historical Buddha, successfully wields his arrow to pierce the targets using a great bow only he could draw. And 2 more images from the same sutra on the following page. Sitting with his wife, Gautama is unhappy, for he feels the need to go out into the world to find himself. Gautama leaves home, he leaves his wife, leaves his wealth to go out into the forest. Attendants go to inform his family in that image. And on the right side, from the same sutra, we have at the baptism of Gautama, a gong is struck to erase his evil desires. Vessels on heads contain water for tonsure. And the next page, we have the burning Buddha. And here are 2 more images, which I will read. From that same sutra, out riding one day, the historical Buddha sees a sick man. Shocked by a man's suffering, he dedicates his life to serving humanity. So this is the famous episode of his first encounter with human suffering and his response to it. The final one from that sutra, coming upon the remains of a dead man, Gautama realizes the same end awaits all. Nothing on earth is permanent. So this is the sort of doctrine of impermanence that he realizes upon encountering this dead man. On the right side of this page, we have image number 30. Amidst the flames, an incarnation of the spiritual Buddha shows that the physical body can be sacrificed for the common good. All right, the burning Buddha. Fire was often the theme of the Buddha's sermons. In one sermon, he spoke of the world aflame, of all men on fire with passion, hatred, infatuation, birth, old age, sorrow, grief, and despair. He explained that all humans are blinded by these flames of desire, flames of infatuation, flames of the cravings, and so forth, and that when men understand the holy way, the fire will be extinguished. It will be nirvana'd. It will be nehand. It will disappear within them, and they will attain enlightenment as soon as they extinguish that fire. That they will no longer be blinded by the attractions of the flames, and they will be free of the fires of passion and desire. And in a famous parable that he told about the old man and a hare, a rabbit, when the old man was starving, the rabbit threw himself into the flames so that his body might supply food for his friend. Transformed, the hare became a vision of the Buddha. The old man then realized that within the small body of the rabbit lived the unselfish spirit of the Buddha. On the next page, we have from that same sutra, we have the death of the Buddha depicted here on the left. The death of the historical Buddha shows him giant size, and the mourners are small. Under sala trees near the river Vati, he entered nirvana. And here on the left, a royal minister weeps while court lady mourns the death of the great spiritual leader of India, China, and Japan. And on the bottom, a demon and a lion grieve at the death of the Buddha. All life, human, animal, and supernatural is represented in this image. The death of the Buddha. As he approached 80 years, the Buddha became ill, and his disciples felt that death was near. But he explained that he had much to accomplish, and his entrance into nirvana must be postponed. He therefore arose from his sickbed. 3 months later, he lay down to die with his faithful disciples around him. Even though it was winter, it is said that the trees burst into bloom. The Buddha told Ananda, his cousin and favorite disciple, that although he was departing this life, the truth that he had taught was the real master, and that he would be with them always, even after death, is his final words to his disciple Ananda. As his soul entered nirvana, it is said that the earth shook and thunder rolled across the sky. So this image on the right is of the Buddha, the historical Buddha entering nirvana. It's called the Nehanzi. This is color in silk, dated around 1086 AD. And we will notice on that image of the Nehanzi, of the historical Buddha entering nirvana, notice how complete calm is expressed on the Buddha's face as he lies amidst the grieving bodhisattvas who are surrounding him, arhats, the wise men, and his disciples. The world of the Buddha. Japanese painters and sculptors deeply influenced by Buddhist art from China and India peopled an entire paradise with guardians, generals, bodhisattvas, asparasis or musical angels, priests, goddesses, demons, disciples, and images of the Buddha. When the Emperor Shōwa decreed that each province should build both a pagoda and a temple, these images appeared throughout Japan. Inside the temples, great figures of the Buddhist faith were installed. The emperor himself built a figure of Vairocana, called Daibutsu, that towered over all others in the nation. It rose 53 feet from the ground. Casting it took decades, and all the Buddhist world knew of its preparation. A huge building was constructed to house the monument, and it is recorded that 10,000 Japanese, Chinese, Korean, and Indian monks attended the decoration ceremony. The images here, let's start with image number 32 on the left side. This is the Heavenly King, or the Zocho Tenzo, made with clay with color. The divine wrath is portrayed in the face of this warrior demigod, one of the Deva kings who guards the temple and Buddhism from evil influences. And then image 33, we have divine beings on the pedestal of the Yakushi Nyorai. Japanese name for this is the Yakushi Nyorai Zo Daiza Haimen Ingyo Ukibori. The bronze relief from the early 8th century, and you will notice the protruding fangs, the curly hair, the necklaces, and the loincloths indicate the non-Japanese character of these unique goblins on pedestal, which holds gods of medicine in Yakushiji. In fashioning the sensitive and colorful figures that peopled the Buddhist world, the artists of the Nara period added a new dimension to the figures made of bronze or of wood by previous generations. They created statues of clay heavily painted with lacquer. Okay, so this is their own sort of invention or addition to these artistic traditions. By removing the core of the clay and replacing it with the light lightweight wooden frame, these dramatic sculptured figures could easily be carried in religious processions. Within the Buddhist temples, many arts were blended. Music and the dance were practiced and taught as part of the religious ritual. Okay, and that's the end of chapter 3, and we will go over some of the details in class. I will see you then in the next chapter. It will be chapter 4, the Heian period. Goodbye.